Welcome to the 3PL Summit Fireside Chat. I am Thomas Wasson, and we are talking with the folks at Genlogs. And one of the big topics that's important if you're in the 3PL space is not only are your carriers real, but do you know where they are? It turns out that when you are an intermediary, knowing the location and knowing position history is super, super important, not only for your safety and security, but for that of your customers. And so we are talking with Ryan Joyce. He's the CEO of Genlogs. And Ryan, it's a lot of stuff in the space, but for folks who are unfamiliar, tell us what Genlogs does.
Tom, it's great to be here. Yeah, Genlogs, we have a nationwide network of roadside sensors that we've placed along all major interstates, highways, freight lanes. Each one of these has 3 HD cameras that collect on the front, side, and rear of every passing truck and piece of equipment. And then we use AI to pull up every type of identifier that you'd want to know about that truck, from the DOT, MC, cab number, VIN. We get the equipment type, logo numbers, all of that. And then we basically have the record that a truck was there at a time and place. So if a carrier says that they do operate in a certain area in certain lanes, we should know that. And if all of a sudden something disappears, we should be able to find it. So that's what Genlogs is at its core.
And I think that's really cool because a lot of times one of the challenges is you have to see if they will share information with you. Can I connect with their ELD? Can I get access to your stuff? But it's turning it on its head, because I'm just going to have it posted up at specific locations, and at least I'm going to get that kind of lane data. Let's talk about that as one of the challenges. One thing I noticed carrier compliance departments, if you're trying to work with carriers, is they'll say, well, they don't have any inspections. But if anyone knows how the FMCSA and inspections work, they only inspect an actual small fraction of the trucks to begin with. So you're kind of at a disadvantage.
Yeah, I fully agree. In fact, we just ran some statistics recently where, first off, Genlogs in the last few months has already seen 13,000 unique carriers on the roads that have never had FMCSA inspections ever. And within the last few months, since November 2024, FMCSA has had about 136,000 carriers that they've inspected. Genlogs has seen over 260,000 carriers during that same time period. So almost twice as much carriers. But I think what the real kind of shocking statistic is FMCSA has inspected about 350,000 unique trucks during that time period. Genlogs has 500 million truck records that we've seen around the country. So we have about 100 times more data than FMCSA on any given day. And it really is ubiquitous and permissionless. No one needs to tap a button or put on a tracker. We're just seeing what's happening on the road so we can make sure we're keeping your freight safe.
And let's talk about how it works as well. So it's equipped with cameras and sensors using technology to identify it. Let's say I'm a broker, I've got under a load. How does it work when I'm working with the Genlogs platform? And what does the process look like whenever I want to verify and make sure, hey, are these guys legit? And hey, I have one under a load. Let's see if we can find them.
Yeah, well, let's get before the load is tendered. And that's really where we want to start it. It begins with understanding, hey, is this carrier real and on the roads? What we like to say is there's a digital record. Someone claims that they're the carrier. Is that matching the physical records? If you kind of think of two-factor authentication, that's what Genlogs is what the digital record matching the physical record. Are they actually out there on the roads? Give you a quick anecdote. Unfortunately, yesterday, we had one of the largest 3PLs in the industry reach out to us. Not a customer of ours yet, but they said, hey, we just had a really expensive load go stolen. Can you help us out? I said, well, let's get that carrier's MC. We'll plug it in. We plugged it into our database, and we had not seen that carrier on the roads until since September 20th, 2024. Now, every day before that, we almost saw them every single day out there on the roads. Then suddenly a complete drop off. I think we all know what that probably was. They unfortunately went out of business. That MC was probably sold, and then that was used to bid on freight and then steal the load. We had the physical record that they were no longer out there operating on the roads. And that was not matching the digital record that they were trying to portend, this fraudster that they were. And so that's how we like to get ahead of it. We want you to help our 3PL customers or anyone in the industry find great carriers that are out there that are running those lanes every day, that have the right equipment that match your needs, that are running, in the areas that you really need some. We will help you find that via our sensor network, that they're real, legitimate, and have what you need. Now, to get back to what you were saying, Thomas, if it's, now you've brokered that load and you're saying, hey, we just want to make sure it's out there. Well, as long as you have any shred of one of those identifiers, you got an MC, a truck number, a VIN or whatnot, you're going to be able to not only go back in time and see where that truck was out there, but you can set an alert in our system and be alerted when that is seen anywhere on our nationwide network. And that's how we can really do this physical overwatch of making sure that high value loads have an extra set of eyes, and not just one eyes, but hundreds of eyes, going to thousands of eyes here soon as we continue to get more of our network out there that's going to be able to watch what's happening and keep the freight safe.
And I think that's really cool because one of the challenges I noticed whenever I was not only a small carrier, but even working as a broker was that you'd like to stay in specific lanes. But the problem is if you're trying to find them, you never know. They'll say stuff like, I can go anywhere in the Southeast, which really meant Atlanta to Dallas. But with a collection of sensors catching it, you can actually find out, well, this carrier is actually, we've only seen them along this corridor going from this place like 85% of the time. They're probably not only legit, but a good match. You should reach out to them. That kind of opportunity.
You got it. And it goes beyond just knowing, are they on that lane? But I think one of the shortcomings, even with some of the ELD data that's prolific out there, is what are they hauling? Are they hauling dry vans, reefers, flatbeds? Like what generally are they out there? And what's unique about our technology with the computer vision aspects of it, we've built a whole library that we continue to add of more and more AI models on the specific equipment types. So if you need to not only look for an open deck out there, but you need a 13-axle lowboy RGN for some very specific application, you can now search nationwide across the entire US on a specific lane, find all of the carriers that have historically had that specific equipment type on that lane. But what's really cool is you can find them literally right now. Who in a market has this specific equipment type that meets our compliance standards? And now you can reach out with confidence there.
That's really clever because it's but beforehand you had to manually make on the back end a database of people who have already ran stuff for you, and that was like your gold. But then when you're in the discovery process, you just got to call somebody. You're just like blind date or speed dialing. So this is really fascinating. How does the process work? Is this something that, like, I'm assuming not only brokerages and shippers would be interested, but if I was like a state DOT, I'd love to see how many people are on my roads so I can tax them efficiently.
Yeah. Well, we made a decision early on that we did not want our data to use in any way that was going to hurt those that are, at the end of the day, just trying to do good work out there. And so, we've had repo companies reach out to us. Hey, we got trucks that are out there on the roads. We want to repossess them. That's kind of a them issue. And we don't want to put data in the hands of anyone that's going to hurt the everyday owner operator or whatnot. We really, at the end of the day, want to protect the owner operators and small businesses out there on the roads by making sure that the fraudsters and those that are impersonating them potentially are kept out. We have countless stories, and it's really sad, where there'll be a freight guard report put out there on a very small carrier, only to find out that some thief was impersonating them on the roads, had slapped on an MC placard on the side that had the same number of the legitimate carrier. And then now that legitimate carrier's livelihood is put at risk or potentially ruined. So in ways that we can actually help the industry and help carriers, we'll do that as soon as it comes down to like, hey, can you help us tell when trucks are speeding? That's where we're drawing the line. We also draw the line. We filter out all private vehicles at the edge. So we're not going to get your minivan or your pickup truck. It's going to be, you got to have a commercial vehicle. It's got to have a DOT on it for it to be in our data. So we've just drawn certain lines on what the data we're going to allow it to be used for or not. The way that our customers access it is just on our platform on a daily basis. It's like asking Google a question. Hey, show me carriers in this way. And I just realized early on that, man, a carrier sales rep's job, it's hard. You got to be calling every day and figuring out, looking, reviewing truck lists, understanding where your carriers are, calling around. Hey, where do you have trucks? What equipment? What lanes? And we just want to put all of that data at your fingertips.
And I wonder if the computer vision, one of the fun things I had to learn the old fashioned way was you don't always have to have it painted. You can use pieces of paper with a certain size or types of markers and paint and other things to literally write your MC and your DOT. Is that ever one of the challenges as well? Because I'm assuming in the earlier story you told, maybe that fraudster just wrote it by hand and they saw it somewhere. And, in this line of work, that can pass if it's done right.
Yeah, it can pass. Fortunately, our computer vision is good enough that we can read handwriting. The other day, we released our deep search capability. You can search any word on the roads. And of course, one of the first words that was thrown out was wash me. And sure enough, you see where people had just carved in the dust, wash me on trucks and all over. But But so that to that end, we can still read handwriting from the placards. What we are developing is the computer vision models to flag when previously we've always seen it look like an acrylic, placed permanently on the side of a truck. But today we see a truck out there that actually it's now handwritten or affixed with tape on paper. We want to be able to flag that. It could still be legitimate, but any additional data that we can get into the hands of our 3PLs is critical to kind of make that call of, is this legitimate or does this pass the sniff test?
And that also can probably go into one of the challenges for compliance teams is autos, scheduled autos, all autos, and verifying VIN numbers. So I'm assuming this can help. Genlogs can help when you have situations where a fleet is growing. They can't buy their own trucks, but they're using a Penske or a Ryder truck, and they're having to then plop it on there. Because that's happened to me before. I get multiple VINs on a Penske truck, and then compliance is like, But then you can check with Genlogs and say, no, we've seen this person in the past week going this route with this thing tacked onto it. This helps aid in the decision making, allowing these carriers, just not getting unduly hated against because some other schmuck decided to be a bad actor and use a similar tactic.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we get data in real time, which means we can sense changes in real time before it's ever reported anywhere else. That includes FMCSA, and we certainly have watched. And it's an awesome thing to witness as carriers are growing their fleets. They have 2 trucks claimed in FMCSA in their last, Form 150 filing, and now we see 6 of them out there. Well, that's awesome. And we're about a month away from releasing in our platform the ability to see, hey, what does FMCSA say? And what's actually happening on the roads and see the differences. And what's really neat, my background is actually in the intelligence community where I spent time within the CIA and elsewhere. And we would use different types of signals that we were collecting over time to look for anomalies that would throw up flags of, hey, there's a potential terrorist attack coming based on the activity that we're witnessing. We want to treat what's happening on the roads kind of like cybersecurity companies do with packets coming over a network, where we can flag in real time, like, hey, this looks different. If you think back to when that carrier just suddenly dropped off in September in 2024, never to be seen again. That's the type of flag that we want to throw, that they either stopped operating or we have way more trucks that are assigned, that are attributed to them than FMCSA is claiming, so that our 3PLs can truly have this God mode understanding of what's happening on the roads.
I like the intelligence aspect because I have 2 thoughts in mind. The first one is the rise in cross-border movements and nearshoring means that not only Mexican and Canadian carriers are crossing into these U.S. locations, but one of the challenges is that for the carriers and brokers who have to have a Mexican and Canadian carrier work on this leg, they probably want to make sure if they're really legit or not. And it's like a black box. Is that something where, looking ahead to these trends, is that one of those big growth avenues? Because if I were y'all, I'd be putting a whole right along that Laredo, El Paso, and a few other routes. I mean, that could probably be a very useful tool because right now everyone and their brother or sister wants to know, can I find a Mexican carrier? Are they real? Am I going to get fleeced? Is that one of the big things to look forward as we're looking ahead in the possible applications?
Yeah, absolutely. Focus on Mexico is a big piece. We just closed actually a $14.6 million Series A that we announced yesterday. And Mexico is where we're focusing now. We have now employees in Mexico that are sourcing locations for our sensors. And we do have sensors in Laredo. So we're trending both sides of the border. And every day we are seeing carriers from Mexico cross into the US, and we'll see exactly where they go. As far up as Illinois, over to California, to New York. We see it all. And so we do have the ability to look at historically, like, hey, does this carrier enter? What are they carrying? What's the type of equipment? Where do they go? Really important within that to protect the industry is also to look at, are they doing what they should be doing, which is going, dropping off, and coming back to the border? Or do we also see them doing intra loads there? And I was speaking to the CEO of one of the largest carriers in the US, said that's one of their concerns is competing on price when Mexico-based carriers are coming over and then running loads within the US, which they shouldn't be. We're seeing that too. We want to protect the industry. We want to make sure that Americans that are doing these jobs within the borders, they're getting paid and compensated effectively too. So we do see it all, and we're going to continue to see more as we're quadrupling the number of sensors we have in the US and spreading down to Mexico and eventually Canada.
So statistically speaking, because this is one of my favorite modeling questions, if you have a large enough sample size and you can be within 97% accurate of a sample of the whole, like kind of how you do polling and, voter inclinations and stuff, does that mean eventually this opens the door for having not only indexes, but that ability to actually find movement of owner operators and manage the changes. Because that's one of our biggest challenges is that we see the FMCSA has numbers and an MCS 150, which is updated once every 1 or 2 years. You all theoretically can watch the ebbs and the flows of carriers by size, and that's a whole type of intelligence that hasn't really had the capabilities of being collected.
You're absolutely right. It's coming soon. I mean, we're sitting on so much data. We have more than 1 billion records of trucks now on the roads and all of the imagery as well that we can go back and apply different models to. Now it's just a matter of unlocking that and putting it to our customers in a way that really helps them on an everyday basis. We frankly should be the new record that tells you, hey, not what does that MCS 150 say a year ago, but what's been happening today or yesterday. That's the type of data we do have. And so we're bringing that and drawing it out so that customers can truly access what's real time happening on the road, and even getting further down to having an understanding of like how many trucks are in Dallas right now and how many of them are headed east versus west. So when it comes to then influencing and working with on pricing areas, this is where we're looking at working with Sonar and some other platforms out there where we are contributing data that helps get more efficient on understanding those truck to load ratios as well.
I mean, you theoretically can have an actual, if the AI is trained correctly, you have the MC numbers, you can find if it's a private fleet, a for-hire fleet. I'm assuming it can identify a sleeper, a day cab, equipment types. So there's really the potential, like if I was a broker, I was a flatbed guy for one of my accounts, I can find within Atlanta, within a 150-mile radius, the amount of MCs that have moved with this equipment type and this thing, and then where they potentially were heading. And then you can call them up and say, hey, would you like a load? Is that kind of the futuristic thing we're moving towards, or are we already there?
I think we're already there. We released actually our real-time carrier locations feature 2 weeks ago or about a month ago. I've never done a carrier sales call. Like I said, I come out of the intelligence community. I'm new in freight. I'm learning from all the smart folks like you every day. And yet I did my first call. I saw a carrier that was in Dallas based out of Fresno. They had a drive in. I just called them up and said, hey, buddy, are you guys in Dallas? Can you take a load to Fresno? And they were like, yeah, how'd you know? We're here. We'd love to. And boom, it proved out that we had it. And we had the visual image of them in Dallas. I mean, there was no question about it. That's where we're getting. And if you kind of think about blending our data with some of the AI automation tools out there, I think it's a pretty exciting and breaking new ground here in the industry, where now you can see who are all those flatbed carriers in Atlanta that likely need to head to Chicago, for example. And instead of putting a human on the call, calling down the list, you absolutely could do that now. But now to be able to really get targeted on who you're reaching out to with some of these AI agents to then connect, start to book, transfer now to that carrier sales rep that now can provide that human connection. But we just helped you get more efficient and target and find the right carrier at the right place and time and equipment.
And looking ahead, because if I'm a carrier, I would like an AI agent. Do you see in the future that the carriers can maybe also partner up? I'd love a situation where I can help share some of my data. And then if I get pinged, I can also at least show, hey, look, this is where I'm running, because there's instances where I'd love to proactively tell folks where I go. Is there something looking ahead, maybe some forward-looking ideas that it can also help the carriers show and tell versus going on a load board and saying, I would like to go anywhere today?
100%. And this is where we're not there yet, but in the future, we do want to provide carriers some additional tools. One of them I already mentioned. Imagine, and we plan to offer this, frankly, to all carriers for free, is that ability to get Overwatch, fraud Overwatch, that if anyone is impersonating you on the roads, you get an alert real time in your inbox with images saying, hey, is this you? Because this seems to be someone else that's trying to impersonate you. And in doing so, then we could also allow the carriers to give us some additional information about their lane preferences, some of their, where they want to break into with regards to new markets, or all of that can now be filtered into our freight intelligence platform to be more efficient in the way that we can now flag to brokers, hey, here are the carriers. And by the way, it doesn't just stop with carriers. We kind of use some of the old CIA methodology to merge the data we're collecting on the roads with other anonymized bulk data sets that are out there. And that unlocks the full origin to destinations of the carriers on the roads, which really gives us unique insight to the shippers' lanes out there. as well as the truckload volumes on those lanes. So when a 3PL gets into our platform, sure, they can find carriers, but now they can also prospect for customers and really understand intimately what those customers' needs are before they reach out.
That's going to be really cool stuff. And we are running low on time, but if folks want to learn more about Genlogs, get in touch, help contribute, what's the best way to learn more?
Visit our website, genlogs.io, genlogs.io. If you're missing anything, we'll help you track it down for free. So we have a find lost assets in the upper right-hand corner. But I would definitely encourage you to book a demo. Our team will show you everything I just talked about today and more. And it's always live and it's always fresh. We'll look up any lane you want or any carrier you want.
Perfect. Ryan, thanks so much for your time. A lot of really great information as well. And we're looking forward to seeing what y'all are up to next.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to join you.
That's going to be a wrap for this segment, but if you are just joining us, we'll eventually have it on demand as well. There's a lot more great content coming up here on the 3PL Summit, so stay tuned.